Hello students, welcome to micro learning on the topic membrane protein. So if you remember well, this topic is taught in your lecture cell and membrane transport, and the related lecture outcome to this topic is describe the composition of the cell membrane. So in this micro learning, we will be focusing on membrane proteins. Okay, before we move on to look into the membrane protein, let's rehash about cell membrane structure. So this is the cell membrane structure consisting of the basic building block, which is the phospholipid molecule making up the bilayer membrane as what you see here. In the membrane, you find other structures such as cholesterol, the membrane proteins, various type as what is listed here. For example, integral membrane proteins, peripheral proteins, glycoprotein, and you also find glycolipid, carbohydrate chain, protein channels, and other related structure. Now let's look at membrane protein. Basically, we can divide them into three types, which are integral protein, peripheral proteins, and glycoprotein. Integral protein, they strongly bind to the lipid bilayer membrane and they are permanently attached. Alright, they can be completely penetrating the membrane as what you see here, or they can be penetrating the membrane partially. When they penetrate the membrane completely, they are known as transmembrane protein. Example of transmembrane protein is the sodium-potassium pump. Alright, now let's look at peripheral proteins. So peripheral proteins, they are temporarily attached by a non-covalent interaction such as electrostatic affinity or hydrogen bond. Alright, so that is how they are attached to the lipid bilayer membrane. An example of peripheral proteins are the digestive enzyme that you find on the intestinal cells, for example. Alright, next we've got glycoprotein. So glycoprotein, you find them on the surface of lipid bilayer, and they are hydrophilic in nature, so they interact or function well in aqueous environment. And the main function is they act in cell-to-cell recognition and binding of other molecules. An example of this is the insulin receptor on the cell. All right. The other roles of glycoprotein, they also provide cross-linking function, all right, for proteins such as collagen to add strength and stability to this tissue. So they are comprised of protein and carbohydrate chain, therefore the name glyco, all right, and they often have a short carbohydrate chain protruding out of the cell surface. And here is a summary of what I've just said. Now let's briefly look at the membrane protein structure. So membrane protein is made of amino acid. The amino acid of a membrane protein are localized according to polarity. The non-polar or hydrophobic amino acid associate directly with the lipid bilayer membrane, whereas the polar or hydrophilic amino acid, it will be interacting or located internally facing the aqueous solution. Moving on about the integral proteins and peripheral proteins. So these proteins will adopt one or two tertiary structure, such as alpha helix, helical bundle, or beta barrel. And here in the bottom, there are list of the function based on their structures as well.